Kara, tell us what the Manhattan District Attorney is now asking for and why.
Well, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has asked the judge overseeing this case to expand the gag order that he imposed, limiting some of the people that Trump could speak about in the case. And they want the judge to warn Trump that if he violates this gag order, he will get sanctioned. Now, the gag order that was put in place last week said that Trump couldn't make statements about potential witnesses, jurors, court staff members, prosecutors, and the family members of court staff and prosecutors. It did not cover the judge, and it did not cover District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Now prosecutors are saying because Trump has made a number of statements beginning the very day after the gag order was put in place, focusing on the judge, calling him compromised, also highlighting the judge's daughter who works for a political consulting firm and taking aim at her by name by suggesting that she is biased against Trump. So in their filing, prosecutors write, this court should immediately make clear that defendant is prohibited from making or directing others to make public statements about family members of the court, the district attorney, and all other individuals mentioned in the order. They also got to one argument that Trump's team had made earlier where they were saying that Trump has a right to political speech, and the prosecutors saying in their letter to the judge that what Trump is saying is not protected by political speech. They said it's viciously and falsely smearing the judge and his family. Wolf?
Kara, I understand Trump's attorneys also are now responding in their own filing. Is that right?
Yeah, so Trump's lawyers have responded. They said that Trump hasn't violated the gag order because it didn't cover the judge's family members. And they believe that they do have a right to respond to some of the concepts out there about the judge's daughter, who she works for a Democratic political consulting firm, and they feel like they should be able to respond to that. They wrote in their filing to the judge today, accordingly, because the gag order expressly does not apply to family members of the court or the district attorney, and because the challenged social media posts were not intended to materially interfere with these proceedings, President Trump did not violate the gag order, and no contempt warning would be appropriate. They want the judge to keep this gag order as he gave it last week and not to expand it in any way and not to threaten to sanction Trump if he were to violate the gag order in the future. Now this is before the judge, so it will be up to him to decide how he's going to weigh in here. Wolf.
Interesting. Kara Scannell reporting for us. Thank you, Kara, very much. I want to bring in Elliot Williams right now. Elliot, what's the significance of Alvin Bragg himself asking the judge to now clarify whether the gag order includes members of the president's family?
Well, if it was very important for Alvin Bragg to make this request, and here's why. On Friday, the district attorney's office had merely sent a letter asking the judge to clarify or confirm what the gag order said. Well, they were asking for it to be expanded, not clarified or confirmed. And even setting aside how reprehensible some of the speech that the former president has engaged in, the gag order simply did not prohibit it on its language. It didn't speak about the judge or the judge's family members. So it was very important for prosecutors today to go to court and specifically ask the judge to expand the gag order.
Interesting. Elliot, let me follow up. Are you surprised we haven't already heard from Judge Merchan about the gag order? Do you see any First Amendment issues including the judge's family?
Well, there absolutely are First Amendment issues whenever you're talking about political candidates and speech and threats, and where the line between permissible speech and threats is. And that's blurry. Lawyers, people, professors in this area of law grapple with these questions. So, of course, it's going to be complicated. Now, am I surprised that we haven't heard from the judge yet? No, of course not, because really, the judge had to give the parties time to brief up this issue. All we had up until today were letters from the two parties' attorneys, like the prosecutors and the defense attorneys just wrote letters to the court saying what they thought. Today, we got formal filings. I think the judge will digest them now and make a more official ruling than just a couple attorneys saying back and forth in snippy letters to each other, we think that the former president violated a gag order.
Kara Scannell is still with us. Kara, what sort of timeline could we be looking at for an eventual decision?
Well, the judge has these filings as of today. So as Elliot was saying, he'll want to digest them. There are complicated issues about the First Amendment and political speech, so he will likely want to do a little research into them as well. But he did spend some time on this in the beginning. I mean, at the very start of this case, prosecutors wanted there to be some order or directive toward Trump about his speech. And the judge was very clear at the beginning. He didn't want to impose a gag order in this case because he recognized Trump's right to free speech. Now the analysis here, since he did impose a gag order and now the people are asking to extend it, he will digest the law here about what it says about how expansive the gag order can be and whether it should protect the family members of some of these people. I mean, the other thing the judge has considered are the threats that the prosecutor's office had received after Trump made statements last year. I'm sure he'll be looking to see if there's been any uptick in that, as well. He is one being targeted. He will know what is coming in, but I don't think he is going to expand it to include himself.
Elliot, if the judge rules in favor of the prosecutors, would you expect Trump to appeal, and how would that work?
He certainly can. Now, if he rules in favor of the prosecutors, all that would happen is the judge would still have to give the former president time to cure or correct the statement. You can't just slap sanctions on an individual. You have to give them a chance to either retract it or explain why they made it or whatever else. New York law requires that. Now, once sanctions are imposed, there is a process whereby the former president could appeal the sanctions, and that could go up, again, back to the judge or to the appeals court for a longer process there. But again, nothing would be immediate. You have to give the party a chance to correct the problem before you move with sanctions.
Interesting. Kara, what do we know about why Trump is opposing expanding this gag order to include the judge's family?
Well, Trump's lawyer's argument is that he needs to campaign and he needs to be able to defend himself against the charges. And they're arguing that the judge didn't restrict him from making these statements about his daughter. The judge's daughter works for a Democratic political consulting firm. Trump's team has been focusing on that as being, is the political opponent. And so they're pointing that out in what they argue would be part of their ability to defend against these charges. And as Trump has made claims about there being bias, he has already moved once to recuse the judge from this case for a small dollar donation he had made to Democrats several years ago. And he noted in this filing today that they may seek to bring another motion for the judge to be recused. So part of their argument here is that there is some bias, and part of his argument is that this is free speech, campaign speech, and he should be allowed to make these comments, particularly since they weren't covered by the first gag order in this case. Wolf.
Interesting. Scott Jennings and Bakari Sellers are also joining us in this conversation. Scott, Trump opposes any expansion of the gag order, but Trump also has kids and knows what it's like, what's like for people to attack them. So why would he be doing this to someone else's children?
Well, I think he's doing it because he is trying to get a recusal of this judge. I mean, remember, I think the whole legal strategy of Trump is to do anything he can do to slow things down, to get delays, to push all this stuff back. And so I assume that's part of it here. I mean, she's not a young child. She is an adult, and she does work in Democratic politics. I mean, one of the things he has said is true. She does work in Democratic politics, and it's interesting to me that Democrats are so bent out of shape of it today, because it's sort of the same argument that they've made about Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. They've argued that he should have to recuse because his wife is politically active, but they don't seem to see the same standard here for this judge. So, look, I question whether it's good for him to attack a judge's family. This judge, after all, holds his fate somewhat in their hands. But I do think there may be a bit of a double standard here on Democratic outrage over the issue.
Well, let me let Bakari weigh in on that. And also, why do you think it's been so hard, Bakari, for Republicans to say that the judge's daughter should be off limits as far as Trump's condemnations are concerned, and that attacking her should be condemned?
Attacking her should be beyond the pale. Anybody attacking someone's child, regardless of how old they are, particularly in a legal proceeding, should be just off limits. The first thing, the Clarence Thomas analogy is just not quite accurate. I mean, there's a question about Clarence Thomas's ethics, and there's a question about whether or not his wife actually actively participated via text messages and other things with an insurrection. And so those two things are vastly different. There's no question about the ethics of this judge. There's no question about any impropriety on the part of his daughter. And so she should be off limits. My biggest problem with this, Wolf, and everyone watching this will say that there is a double standard for Donald Trump. I do criminal defense law in my day job, and I can tell you that if I had any, and I believe Elliot would agree, if I had a singular client that went beyond the pale and did this, they would be hauled in, their bond would be revoked. They would not only be chastised, but they would be under the jail wearing orange and every day have to change into a suit when they come to trial. What we're seeing right now is fundamentally, in the words of my 5-year-old kids, not fair. But this is what Donald Trump oftentimes gets. He gets unfair treatment. He's not fed out of the same spoon of justice.